Good morning, my wild and beautiful friends. I'm so glad you're here. Today we're talking Snickers Easter eggs. Totally veganized, totally delicious. Keep on watching to see how we make them. Okie dokie, guys. First things first, we're going to prep our dates. These dates happen to be pitted already, but be careful when you buy your dates to make sure that you pit them if there is a little seed in there. I'm using an 8-ounce package and we're going to use it for the whole recipe. So I'm just going to cover it with warm water and we're going to let these little guys soak and get soft while we get all the rest of our ingredients together. Okay, we're getting some good use out of our silicone egg mold this year. This is proving to be a very good Amazon purchase. Anywho, what we're going to do is coat our eggs with multiple thin layers of melted chocolate, and that's going to help us create a really nice shell to hold our vegan Snickers in. So I've melted some chocolate over a double boiler, and I've got this silicone brush here. You can totally just use a paintbrush as well. I've done that in previous videos where I've made Cadbury eggs and Reese's eggs. So I'm just going through each egg, trying to get all the edges, making sure that it's quite thin. It tends to want to pool into the bottom, so keep brushing it up if you can. Once we get these all painted for the first time, I'm going to toss them in the freezer for about 5 minutes so they can harden, and then we can get our next layer going. I'm purposely trying to make this quite thin so we don't end up with a really chunky shell. So we're headed to the freezer, and this is where we can kind of see where we're missing some things. You can already tell there's some holes there in our chocolate, so that's why we're going to do 3 layers to make sure that we get every egg very evenly coated. Here's the second layer going on. Pretty straightforward. I'm just trying to make sure that I'm getting any of those holes that are a little bit easier to see now that our chocolate has hardened a bit. And then we'll pop it back into the freezer for another 5 minutes. Okay, third and final layer. Now back to the freezer for one final chill while we quickly assemble the rest of the Snickers components, if you will. Super simple. I've got my food processor here and some oats. And I'm just going to blitz these up to make a really coarse oat flour. You can definitely buy oat flour in the store, but this is cheaper and really simple. So once we've got a coarse looking flour like so, I'm going to add in some roasted and unsalted peanuts. You can definitely use any type of nut you like. Almonds and or cashews work amazing. But this keeps the recipe pretty inexpensive, and it also can double for the rest of the ingredients as well, as you'll see in just a moment. So I've got this ground up into a pretty coarse looking flour here. I just pulsed my food processor for probably about 15 seconds. Now I'm going to drain our date water that's been soaking and making sure to keep this on reserve because we will definitely use it in the recipe. And I'm going to add about 1/3 of our dates, so maybe about 10 dates to get started. I'm also going to add in a pinch of salt and a teaspoon of that date water to kind of bring everything together. And then we're going to blitz everything up until those dates become super small and the whole thing turns into a dough consistency. If it ends up being too wet, you can definitely add in more oats. If it seems too dry, you can add in more of that date water until you get to this consistency. Very Play-Doh-like. So this is going to be the nougat section of our Snickers bar. I'm just going to dump this out into a bowl, and I'm not even going to worry about cleaning my food processor. I'm just going to move straight on to the next ingredients because it doesn't matter if they mix up a little bit, right? All about easy cleanup and less dishes if humanly possible. So we've got our food processor here again. We're going to add in the rest of our dates. I'm also going to pour in the remaining date water because that's got some really nice sweetness in it and it's going to thin out our caramel really nicely. Then I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of super good quality vanilla. Then I'm going to eyeball about a cup of creamy peanut butter. Try to get a peanut butter that has as little ingredients as possible. You can definitely get the all-natural kind. I just wasn't at a grocery store that carried it, so this organic kind will work. And I do actually like the really smooth stuff. It just creates an even smoother caramel. So you do you, whatever you can find, it'll work. So I've just blitzed it up for about 30 seconds. You can see that it's super creamy. I'm hoping, I'll zoom in, I'm hoping you can see there's just little bits of dates there, which is no big deal, but I want it to get like super smooth. So I'm gonna let this go for another 30 seconds to a minute until it gets nice and smoothed out and there's no little date chunks, and we'll be good to go with our vegan caramel. Okay, I'm hoping you can see the difference as much as I can in real life, but this is like epically creamy. It's going to be so good. So now all we've got to do is assemble our Snickers into our chocolate eggs. It's going to be super simple. I'm just kind of lining up all our ingredients here, taste testing a peanut or two as we go. So we've got our shells going here. They're nice and cooled off from the freezer. Super hard. And I'm essentially going to build our Snickers upside down because when we turn the egg over, we want that caramel to be on top like an actual Snickers bars would be. So I'm going to add about a teaspoon into our eggs here of our caramel mixture. And no, in case you're wondering, I'm not this fast at filling up vegan Snicker Easter eggs. I just sped this up a little bit so you didn't have to sit and watch me do every single one. But then I'm going to add a little sprinkling of our roasted peanuts here. And then I'm going to pop these in the freezer to let them firm up for just a couple minutes so we can add our nougat on top and not have it all smushed together. Then I'm just going to do a little bit of nougat sculpting, if you will. I'm just going to make a little ball here, probably about a teaspoon as well. This one's a little big. I'm going to make a little smaller, an egg shape, and just kind of make a little pad and put it on top of our peanuts and caramel. Like so. I'm going to try to make sure that it doesn't go over that egg part because we're going to want to leave a little bit of room to add more chocolate to kind of complete the shell. So I'm just going to go along here. This recipe makes about 16 to 20 of these eggs. So we're going to have a little bit extra mixture if you only have one egg mold. You can definitely do this in a pan if you don't feel like going through all the trouble of making the egg, but I just think it's kind of fun for the holiday. And once we get these all filled, I'm just going to take the rest of our melted vegan chocolate and put it over the edge. I missed somehow recording that part, but I'm essentially just putting down about a teaspoon of chocolate, and then I'm going to go around with a spatula to make sure that all of those edges are touching so we get a solid egg. I decided I'd go through with a little spatula and make it even flatter, but honestly, just doing it like this with a spoon will work just fine. The spatula thinned out the shell a little bit, which I really liked, but it also made it a little bit trickier to clean up once we took them out of the freezer. So it's totally up to you, whatever you find easier. Either way, it's going to work. And like I said, we're just going to pop this back into the freezer for probably about 10 minutes this time, just to make sure everything's really nice and solid. And we are ready for the best part, taking them out of the mold. So I find with this mold, I've said it a few times, but just in case this is your first silicone mold video of mine that you've seen, I find it's easiest to pull from the edges to pop them out instead of just trying to press them out from behind, especially when there's something kind of attaching them on the back end here. So I'm just pulling them apart like so, and then I can pop it really easily. So cute. So as you can see, we've got these little edges. I'm going to go through and kind of break them off with my fingers. The colder the eggs are, the easier they are to handle. If you've got warm hands and not so cold eggs, they're going to get kind of fingerprinty really easily. So just be careful of that. Once I've popped off these big chunks here, I'm going to go back through with a little paring knife and clean up the edges even more. Then we will have ourselves the cutest batch of vegan Snicker eggs that you've ever seen, and perhaps an excuse to use a holiday platter again. I'm stoked about that. Look at that, caramel's already oozing out of our Snickers egg here. Let me get you a shot of the inside, all those yummy layers. So good, minimal ingredients, pretty easy to make. I hope that you guys give these a try and love them as much as I do. And I really hope that you're having a lovely spring so far and you're staying safe and healthy. I can't wait to talk to you soon. Cheers.